Good evening, my friends. Welcome to the Shadow Davis Show. This is Tuesday, March 17th. Happy St. Paddy's Day and the luck of the Irish to you, 2026. And tonight on the show, our special guest is Jeff Gaudry. Jeff was one of the main organizers at Universal Ostrich Farm. Spent, I'm going to say, we'll ask him personally, but large chunks of time there in 2025. And even after the mass massacre of over 300 ostriches back in October, or was it November, Jeff still went back to the farm to help with as much cleanup and consolation as he could. Here's a guy dedicated to our rights, to the rights of Canadians, to the rights of farmers, to the rights of landholders, standing against government overreach. And there have been some horrifying allegations leveled at the people, the family at Universal Ostrich Farm in the last few days by a former supporter on a little-known podcast. I think it's on YouTube or maybe it's on Facebook. Anyway, we felt the time was right to come on and talk about these allegations, not necessarily to refute them all, maybe just to put them in perspective and let you know exactly from Jeff's perspective and from mine. Don't forget, I did spend a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks at Universal Ostrich Farm back in the early summer. And my impressions of the family and most of the supporters there was just one great big heart. People were there for the right reasons. Now, I can't speak about anything that happened past the end of July, but Jeff can. And that's the reason that he's here tonight. So we're going to talk about that and more in just a second. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Been a while.
Hey, Shadow, how are you? Thanks for the invite to come on the show tonight.
I'm happy to have you because I just saw that interview with Julie, former supporter at Universal Ostrich Farm, and I had met her. And I'm going to keep my opinions to myself on her. We will play some clips of the interview that she did, where she makes these allegations that are mostly opinion. Would you say that I'm right in saying that?
Yeah, I have watched the interview. I think that was part 2 of a 2-part series. I watched both parts, and
the first part was with Dave Belinsky, the co-owner, right? I'm sorry, say again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, what I gathered from her interview was it was her opinion, and I struggled to see where sometimes there was evidence to support those opinions. That's why I was compelled yesterday to do a live and talk about it a little bit, because I thought it's only fair to share a perspective that isn't so biased and so one-sided when it comes to how someone that was a supporter seen the farm.
Well, the one of the interesting things I think is how so many people are wondering, where'd the money go? What happened to the money? I made a donation, or maybe they didn't make a donation, and they're still saying, how was the money spent? I mean, this is not a question that gets asked to the United Way or the Cancer Society or the Heart and Stroke Foundation or uh, Rogers or Bell when you buy $100 pay-per-view package to watch some UFC, right? You don't say, hey, by the way, how are you going to be spending my money? You don't ask them that stuff. But for some reason, when you make a $20 donation to an ostrich farm, where'd the money go? What's going on with the money? Now, people are right to speculate too. In certain cases, we have seen some people abscond, right? And just run away with it.
This world is full of that kind of corruption, unfortunately. So, like people always tend to, some people, I shouldn't say people, a few people always tend to speculate negativity. Generally, I've noticed anytime money is being raised for any cause, someone will critique it. It comes with the territory, I believe.
Except for the big established charities, like I mentioned, right? Because it's out of your hands
the
at
ones
that
that
point.
maybe 15% actually get to the cause.
Yeah, the ones with the 8-figure CEOs and the whole pyramid of 7-figure vice presidents. So look, we're not here tonight to speculate on the personal relationships of people that we don't have firsthand knowledge of. That's very important to say. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I think. Having said that, seeing as how you're here, Jeff, did you have an affair with Katie Pasitny?
Shadow, as much as the hate groups and everyone that's against the ostrich farm wants to believe it. No, of course not. Me and Katie never had an affair. Me and Katie were more like, well, you were there. We were more like a brother and sister kind of thing because I was so close to their family. Karen was like a mom to me. Esper was like a brother. David, Jody were like uncle and auntie, like how it was. And we would bicker like the same way as Esper and her would bicker and stuff like that, when we disagreed with things that were going on and stuff. So it was quite amusing when the desperate people that just wanted to hurt us in every way, shape, and form chose to push those narratives.
Yeah. Some people were creating AI photographs of you and her together that made it seem as though there was something going on. And I've seen those photos. I've seen the real photos. I've seen the AI photos, and I've seen the two of you together in person, live and in color. And
my favorite one, Shadow, are the ones where they they go to the extremes of making half human, half ostrich babies. I think there's one with an ostrich priest standing behind us.
an ostrich
It really
priest.
got ridiculous. Like these people that were opposing the ostrich farm, the big concern was supposed to be like, like why are these people fighting the government, this and that? The government's in the right, and they ended up turning it into some weird, chaotic. Oh, it blows my mind, Shadow. I chuckle about it today to the day when I think about it.
When did you first arrive there at the farm? The first time that you went?
The very, very first time, I was actually thinking about that before my thing yesterday. It was just after Easter. So I believe it was the weekend after Easter. So that would have been
Easter changes every year for me. I never know when Easter is.
It was like the very end of April, very, very beginning of May kind of zone. I had obviously been following it just like everybody else for a couple months online. I live in the North Okanagan, so I'm only a couple hours away. A lot of the people that I knew locally from the freedom movement had actually went out there. I had friends encourage me saying, hey, Jeff, like, why aren't you getting involved yet? And I was like, I'm watching, but I was like, come on, the government's gonna, or the courts are gonna see the realism here. These ostriches are clearly healthy now. Like, of course they're gonna let them live. Like, let's see what happens. Well, I was wrong.
You made that assumption after going to the Freedom Convoy?
I'd never really thought too much, to be honest, Shadow, about, like, I knew what the CFIA did. I knew about calls. I knew that they had a lot of power and control, but I never really focused on the reality of the policy. like how black and white it was.
Yeah.
Like there isn't no like, oh, they get better. Okay, well, we're not going to do this now, and we're going to do this. No, it's like they were sick at one point, so they die now. Even if they're, it's like being on death row in jail. You get sentenced, and then you sit there for 3, 4 years, or 5 years, 10 years, waiting for them to give you your lethal injection. I mean, that in itself is torture.
All the while waiting on court rulings and possible reprieves from the governor. He's going to call it the
The
last
only
second.
thing that's keeping you alive is a judicial stay and what a Supreme Court justice decides on your case. It's really morbid when you think about it. I thought about it quite a bit in the process, and I would talk about it with the family, those times when not a lot of people were around, and like the only thing that was keeping those birds alive the whole year was court proceedings, not
Yep.
humanity, not ethics, not
Yep.
reason,
Yep.
court proceedings.
How many different
And
levels
that
of
was why
court?
I realized the policy is jaded shot right out the get-go. Like this policy allows this and suggests this is the way to do business.
How many different levels of court did they go through? I
So,
mean, they had to go to the federal court, the appeals court. They finally got to the Supreme Court at the end.
and then there was lower courts right off the gate. Like I can't even honestly tell you how many different this and that, but I can tell you they went the first several months with that first lawyer. I forget his name. I'm sorry. I should have wrote it down before Omar, before the common lawyer that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Um, and there was all of that, and then it was almost like starting over with Omar again, going down a path that was more realistic from their legal advisor's perspective or whatever, right? So
Mm.
they were trying every single thing they legally possibly could, and that's why I find the criticism against, oh, like these animals should die, or you have no right to fight. No, our legal system, the system we abide by, the system all these liberals stand by, that govern us, says that these people have the right to fight this policy, this decision, the CFIA. And that's exactly what they did, tooth and nail at every level. And that gave those birds almost an extra year of life.
And it comes with a considerable cost. We're going to get into that, Jeff. I just want to play some of these clips from Julie. Her name is Julie Carson.
Yeah.
Now, what was her? She got there before you did. Am I correct?
It was like the weekend before me or week before me, but yeah, she definitely was there when I first rolled in. She wasn't in a leadership role when I rolled in, but you got as it went in the beginning. I was only there on the weekends. I think I was there that weekend. I came 2 weekends later, and she stayed once she got there, right? So I would see Julie every few weekend or couple weekends, sometimes every weekend. And after, a few visits, Julie was now in what she called in her interview the camp director role. So I met her. I never honestly ever butted heads with her once, like me and her personally. I remember an odd night of cookies and milk by the fire in conversation. So any kind of weird whatever that was going on didn't really involve me at the time. I wasn't in a leadership role yet. I was just a supporter trying to figure out what we were doing here and really understand where the family was coming from.
Right. So she moved into that director role. She explained it. I'm not going to play that clip, but why was it that she was moved into that spot? Did Karen ever explain that to you or Katie?
Well,
or Dave?
It's just like there was a whole bunch, like there was, Doug, he was head of security, and I forget who was running the kitchen at the time. It might have been Tina, and there was a few other people that were in different roles. And, I guess from her previous experience in life, she was, obviously in some sort of management role.
Wasn't
So
it that woman who destroyed the toilet in the trailer? Like the one who was running the kitchen, didn't she use the bathroom in the trailer? There was something about that.
No, that was Sherry. She ran the kitchen later on. Julie and Sherry were friends.
Okay.
So yeah. And actually a lot of people get them confused when they're talking about Julie, because not a lot of people knew everybody back then. There was only, like Julie said, a couple dozen, 30, 40, and then the numbers grew, to 100, 150 on the weekends. They die down, grow, shrink. So when she was the director, um, things were still, they hadn't grown really massive yet. So
Yeah. Okay. I just remember showing up very late at night, my first visit there, and I didn't even meet her for 3 days or 4 days before I took off down to Abbotsford to visit my son, and then came back a couple of days later. I think I met her then. Um, my impression was that she stayed up late, got up late, and did a little bit of drinking too, just like everybody else. I'm not going to sit here and say that she was the only one, she was the camp drunk or anything like that. People were drinking more. I know I had a few more drinks than I'm sorry.
sure. Well, a lot of people kind of seen it as like camping. Like they were out there supporting a cause, but they were out on this beautiful property. The weather was half decent, even in the spring, beautiful river. People were doing a lot of stuff, volunteering, helping stuff. But yeah, like they sat by fires at night. Um,
Very hot, very like beautiful landscape, the mountains all around. Incredible. I'm going to play this first clip. This is Julie on this show. I forget what it's called. What's the guy's name again?
Anthony Russo.
Anthony Russo. Okay. So Anthony Russo talking to Julie here, and she's talking here about her first impressions of Katie and Karen.
Okay.
Meeting Karen and Katie, though, why don't you tell me a little bit about your first impression of them when you arrived at the farm?
Yeah, okay, I should back up a little bit. My first impression of Katie was she's not a farmer. She was very charismatic. She was very bouncy, big personality, drew people in. I wasn't really drawn to her as a person, like not somebody that I would really want to be friends with. And I just was a little bit concerned with some of her language and just some of the nuances of what she said. Didn't love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, over time, well, actually, why don't we ask this? What was your first impression of Karen like?
She was definitely head honcho there for sure. That was my first impression. She seemed like a nice lady, though. Like she was very kind to people. She let people, come into the house, and she was cooking us meals, and seemed very personable. But she definitely seemed like she knew what she wanted, and she was the kind of person that knew what she wanted and got what she wanted.
Okay, so that
I'm going to come to your house and totally critique you.
I'm blown away by that, and of course, everybody is entitled to their own opinions and their own impressions.
Yeah.
But when I first met Katie, this would have been on this show, January of 2025, late January of 2025. Carrie Simpson had messaged me about something to do with an ostrich farm in a remote town in British Columbia, and I said, "So what does that have to do with the price of tea in China?" Right. I mean, I'm thinking ostriches. We've got ostriches. What? And then she went on to explain the scenario. And after about a week of convincing, Carrie Simpson is very, very tenacious. I finally said, okay, well, let's go ahead and do an interview. And the first one was me, Carrie, and Katie. And Katie didn't say much, not at all, as a matter of fact. She was, on the split screen like we are right now, except there was three of us. And she didn't say 3 words. And I thought, that's interesting. Then a couple of weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, I had her on again. And this time she was far more talkative, but she wasn't as talkative as the Katie we got to know later. And I saw her growth as, let's call it a media personality, for lack of a better expression, over the course of a very short time. I'm going to say between last year about this time and maybe May or June, she really blossomed into that character that Julie was talking about there. Her language, what do you think she meant by that? Too many curse words?
I guess. I don't know. Like, we're adults, I guess once in a while we accidentally swear. I mean, like.
I mean, you're under pressure.
I never noticed her to be overly, swear too much, but I wasn't there critiquing those kind of things. So
Well, no, I mean, you're at a farm, right, in the middle of nowhere. And I'll tell you something else. She's not a farmer, is what Julie said.
yeah,
I remember having
you people comment, eh?
well, I had an interview scheduled with Katie, and I was wondering where she was. She didn't show up for it, right? It's like a half an hour until we're on, and I'm thinking, what the hell? So I called her up, and I said, what's going on? She goes, I'm sorry, but I got caught up in the ostrich pens. This is when the ostriches obviously were still alive, and I'm covered in shit right now, and I can't go on screen. That's what she said. And I went, okay, well, you've got time to go take a shower if you want to. Okay, I'll be there a quarter after. And so we waited for 15 minutes until Katie got herself presentable, covered in shit, right? Covered in feed, covered in whatever it is they got covered in, doing the daily chores in the ostrich pens. Not a farmer. I mean, she was always wearing a baseball cap all the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I can't tell you how many times I seen her and her mom, like you say, just covered in from working in those ostrich pens, like even I would like take my hats off to them. Like you would see those birds pecking at them and
Constantly.
summertime, it was so hot out there and they're out there in the blistering sun, religiously taking care of all those birds day in, day out. You don't get a day off. There's no such thing as, well, with Sundays we don't take care of the animals.
Yeah, right. They're on their own. It's funny. Like, Karen too, right? Like the thing about her was when I first met her, it was like, oh, I'm so happy you're here. What can I get you? You don't have to get me anything. No. What do you want? Do you want a drink? Do you want a coffee? Whatever, right? And so that night, it was just, I got to go to bed. I'd been on the road for 14 straight hours, whatever it was. And I just
and what the power out? Like, didn't we have a big storm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the rain windstorm, crazy. But I went to bed, like everybody else went to bed. And then the next morning, it was everybody sitting around the kitchen table. And you could not stop her from putting something in front of you, whether it was a coffee, eggs, whatever it was that was being made. She made a point of it. And she was wearing her suspenders, her hip waders, big rubber boots, all of the stuff she needed to go into the ostrich pen. So in the morning, she would take care of everybody in the house, make sure they were all fed and everything, and then go and spend however many hours in there in 35 degrees.
And then come and like a lot of time, people obviously tried to help her, but she liked to take care of people. And then she would cook people dinner and this and that. I mean, that woman went from the crack of dawn till the time to bed.
I never saw her upset.
Eric, her husband, who's paraplegic, right? I mean, it's a job in itself right there.
Yeah. And we heard him yelling a lot of times, Katie, Karen, right? Like, so if it wasn't one thing, it was another, on top of all of the pressure that's being leveled on you by runaway government agency, court date coming up, and locals who did not like being. Now, Julie talked in her interview too about locals. I'm not going to play a clip of that, but apparently there was a lot of locals that didn't like it. And there was a Facebook group threatening to come in and kill these ostriches and hurt the people at the farm. And that was upsetting as well. These are all things that all of these folks lived through every single day for a year almost. Amazing fortitude.
Like your job, like everyone kind of in the outside world is like, oh, your job's fighting the CFIA right now. No, your job is still being a farmer of ostriches. And your second job is now fighting the CFIA. So your job, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Ostriches don't stop. The fight against the government doesn't stop. You were there. Like the table was like the war room, like where research was done nonstop, where messaging was sent out. Like there was always work going on. It all just depended what kind of work it was.
Yeah. So, I have positive impressions of both of them, Katie and Karen, and Dave too. You know what I mean? There was a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, Dave, shady business dealings that go back 25 years or whatever." Right? I mean, I sat down and had great conversations with Dave. He explained to me his history, you know, working in forestry and then later on becoming this ostrich farmer and telling me all these things about ostriches. I learned from him and from Karen, for that matter. I never had a personal issue with Dave, not at all.
Yeah, no, I like Dave too. I love everybody there, right? Like Dave, Karen, Katie, all the family. And like it's funny because Dave actually worked with my father-in-law 45 years ago in forestry. So when my father-in-law found out I was going out there, I was stopping by his mill to pick up a load of cedar one day, and he was like, "Hey, say hi to Dave for me." And then he began to tell me kind of the little history, how they knew each other logging back in the day. And then I went out there and told Dave, "Hey, my father is this person." He knew right away, and he's had stories about my father-in-law and this and that. So, like we kind of had that instant connection that, like an association kind of outside of there. So yeah, we hit it off. Like I always got along great with Dave, like you say, he's a chatter. He loves to talk, loves to tell his story.
Sometimes it got to the point where you'd be sitting in the kitchen there in the dining area, having a quick coffee. Dave come down and sit and start talking. You go, "Oh, I've got to go down to the river. I've got things I have to do. I can't really spend any time listening here," because he could go on. There's no doubt. I'm going to play this next clip here, Jeff. This is Julie on this podcast talking about donations.
You saw, what kind of donations were coming into the farm?
Cash.
A lot of
cash. I don't know. There was a lot of things. There was an online auction. There were just cash donations coming in. I know some people were e-transferring and such. I had no idea about any online give, send, goes or anything like that at that time. So we had like a donation box in the kitchen. People would put money in there. People would sometimes just hand you money. If they thought that you were in charge of something, they would hand you money and you would just sort of give it over to the house. I wasn't nearly aware of the scale of what was going on at that time, with the exception of there was one large independent donor, and he was supposed to be anonymous at first. He sent a volunteer there to sort of represent him, and it was a large chunk of money, and it was supposed to be helping the volunteers. It was the idea. There were hotel rooms made available for people. The money was to be used for like transportation, for food, even giving individuals gas money if they needed it, that kind of thing. I personally got concerned because I didn't feel that Katie was necessarily the best person to be in control of that. I think we needed somebody that had more of a business mind, more of a budget, that would follow a budget and that kind of thing. There are different podcasters out there that have done their own research or have had other people do research for them. And I honestly believe for certain the number's over $1 million. Mm-hmm. It's been said as high as $2 million. It depends. From what I've seen, one of the give, send, goes especially disappeared, and it was a really big one. So I really can't say what the total would be, but it was huge.
Okay, so she's speculating that the donations were anywhere between. I'm sorry, man. You've muted yourself here. You got to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry.
So she's speculating it's between $1 and $2 million, the donations that came in.
Yeah, that's what he's claiming. I don't know where that number comes from, and she said something about it's independent research done by podcasters or something that she knows of, and numbers anywhere from that to that. I would love to see this. If she's seen it, she obviously has access to it. I would love to see, like,
she didn't say she'd seen it.
Oh, she did.
What she said was there are podcasters out there who have done their own research and come up with those numbers. Now, I can tell you that I am an independent journalist slash podcaster slash influencer. I do tons of research daily, and I wouldn't know how to research something this chaotic. There's absolutely zero. You could go to the Give, Send, Goes, I suppose, or the GoFundMe's.
Running tally of whatever online platforms they were connected to and add those up.
Yeah. But what are you going to do? Like, are you going to go and say, hey there, I know that you were at the ostrich farm. How much did you drop in the donation box? Because there was a donation box in the kitchen, like you'd mentioned before. Yeah. And people would just hand money, right? So there's absolutely zero way to say exactly how much money came in. But I can tell you this. I know that if you want to take a case or try to take a case all the way to the Supreme Court, you're talking about at least $1 million in legal fees. $1 million.
Said and done, yeah.
So and I know that some of the legal fees that the Ostrich family, that Karen, Katie, and the family are still, not paid. So
the number's 284.
284,000 they still owe.
That's what I think the number has been said to be by the family, yeah.
And so if they had all of this money stashed away someplace, would it not be paid off? Why would they be waiting to pay it off? It makes no sense to me. So what is your take on her comments there?
Well, for one, I don't know where they get, like you just said, the $1 million to $2 million number. I think that's pretty outlandish. Katie the other day put up a post. I seen it, and there was somebody was running some sort of one of those fundraisers, and it was something about getting new ostriches, and Katie was like, this isn't our family, like we're not connected to this. And underneath that, she listed the online platforms that her family endorses or they're the beneficiaries of, and it's like a few. So it's not hard to dial in what those are. You can click on them and it says totals raised.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I haven't looked on them. Like, I've never really focused on the money stuff, so I've never really like cared to bother and look. But I think it's outlandish. Not to mention, Shadow, I was there at times, and I watched. Like I was there, like you say, a lot from start to finish. Just weekends at first, pretty much full time the last few months. Once things got heavy. And I seen the struggle Karen and Dave and Katie had sometimes trying to make it all work. So yeah, money was rolling in from donations and that, but they're trying to, in my opinion anyways, they're trying to manage this count, making sure however many people they're taking care of. Sometimes that was a lot of people, especially as the fall or September came. Those ladies in the kitchen were cooking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meals a day.
And nobody ever paid for a meal there, right?
They had that box where you could put a donation in the kitchen, or like that Julie mentioned. So people, I don't know, I never had, like, some of the ladies that helped with things would come out with and unlock it, take that and give it to Karen nightly or whatever, so it didn't just get left out there. And I think they had a little mini one up by that little booth at the front gate that people would hang out at. And yeah, then everything was free for everyone. And you seen it, like it wasn't mealtime, they would have fruit, waters, beverages, whatever, little snacks. And then they always provided, a breakfast and a lunch, and then breakfast and dinner. And then there was stuff there for lunch if they didn't do a big thing. And then, you're running all this propane and gas for generators, and you got porta potties, and you got, not to say a lot of stuff didn't get donated, but I seen what it took for them to keep that operating, at the same time keeping up with the payments of the lawyer. Obviously, you don't pay that $1 million when you're taking it that far all at once, but whatever agreement you have with your lawyer, as well as I do, the lawyer is going to expect certain amounts of money at certain times. So like I say, I was there at times where Karen was in tears, Katie was in tears, and they were stressing because they knew they needed to somehow make that work.
Or come up with $20,000 to give the lawyer. I do recall there was one point when I was there, and I think the RCMP liaison officers were there at the front, that little booth they had set up where they were selling the merch, which, by the way, was not gangbusters. I want everybody to know that. Like, whoever came in, sometimes they'd buy a T-shirt, homemade T-shirt from some of the folks who were there. There's a lot of artisans on the property at that time, and it would be like $10, $15. It wasn't like it was, Alex Jones store or anything like that.
No, they were making $5 a shirt or something.
Maybe. And so, we'd see Karen and Katie in tears because the lawyer's threatening to stop representing them if they can't pay him by tomorrow at 5:00. And we're talking about a chunk of $20,000 here.
Yeah.
And they're going, I cannot, how am I supposed, I don't know where I'm going to get $20,000. And even with the wealthy benefactor from the United States, who we'll get into in just a second. But here in this clip, Julie appears to be making allegations of fraud. So let's have a look.
Were volunteers or donors ever given any sort of an accounting of how the funds were used or the amounts that were coming in and going out?
No, absolutely not. Not even remotely.
Wow, so no system.
No system.
Okay.
I mean, they seem to want to write down things that the money was spent on for receipts for other people, but I didn't see anything else in that regard. Like, there was never a moment where they say, hey guys, we've hit this donating goal or we've hit this fundraising goal. Never.
Yeah. Now, did you find that, were people ever asking questions about that? Anyone donating money or anybody around? Were people asking questions going, hey, how much has come in or where is this all going? Were those questions popping up at that time?
It was popping up with the supporters. I know personally, I was only there like 3 weeks, and I called 3 weeks, and I called my mom and said, don't you send these people another dime.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You had some big concerns.
For sure, yeah. There was a few of us because we just saw money being spent in ways that it didn't need to be spent.
Okay.
It was just not, there was way more food being purchased than necessary. A lot of the food was going bad. We threw away so much food because food was also alternately or separately being donated.
Okay.
Right? Just some of the expenses were outrageous. Like, there was one time in particular, Katie had come back. Is this okay if I keep going?
Of course.
Okay. Had come back from town, and there's like a huge Costco run, and like we know it was like $800, $1,000 on food from Costco. Some of the things we knew weren't necessarily needed. And then there was also like a case of like $700 she had spent on wine at one time.
Wow.
They've tried to say since that, oh, that was for a relative, but it wasn't, because I was personally, me and the lady I stayed with, we were personally given at least 3 bottles, and I saw it being handed out to people. It was being drank at the farm.
Julie, what do you think happened with the funds? Obviously, they weren't fully put towards the legal bills.
Right.
Where do you think they were used? Do you think they're still in an account somewhere? Like, what's your opinion?
My opinion is that they're being definitely held within the Esperson family. Why would they not share it with their partner? Why would they not tell their partner where all that money is? Like, that's just it's pretty simple to me. I know that I saw stuff being misused. I can say 6 months ago, Katie was driving an $80,000 vehicle. Today, she's driving a $180,000 vehicle.
Okay, so the first thing I want to get to, like, she's going off the assumption that there's $2 million that was raised, which is questionable.
Imagine that, yeah.
So she's lowering an allegation at Katie, who is now driving a $180,000 vehicle. And yeah, that's true. We talked about that on the phone today.
She's not. Apparently, like, her husband bought a new one, but she's still driving her same vehicle. But I mean, like, her husband owns a successful company. Like, I mean, it's not uncommon for people to buy vehicles. And, like, I have friends that have I have a decent truck. Trucks are not cheap, period. Mine's nothing fancy by any means, but I have friends that have mediocre mid-grade trucks nowadays that are $100,000+. So, I mean, and, what is it relevant? What, like, Katie's family.
What she's
like,
saying there, Jeff, is no, Matt. What she's saying there is that Katie has taken that money and bought herself a new truck.
I think
Clearly,
that's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
And that I take offense to, because that would be, first of all, if you were malevolent like that, that would be too obvious. Do you remember the scene in Goodfellas where Robert De Niro told all of his boys in the crew, nothing expensive? This is just after they did the big heist, right? And dude walks in with a freaking fur coat and a pink Cadillac. I told you, nothing expensive. Go back, take it back. I mean, that would be stupid for Katie to say, oh, look at me now, I'm driving. I mean, seriously.
It's
Right?
pretty ridiculous, and to be honest, I actually asked Katie about that. She doesn't even drive it. She drives the same, what is it, a Yukon or Suburban or whatever still.
Yeah.
So
Something
like she was like, what I wonder is how do these people even know that her husband's bought a new truck?
Well,
Like,
because there's a lot of chatter going on
yeah,
behind the
but are they
scenes.
spying on them? Like,
The gossip mongers, right? What about this misuse of money that she alleges here? I mean, you that's one thing I do know is that you were there, you were in the kitchen, you were pretty much all around all of the operations of the camp.
Yep.
And I could tell you from my observations that it never looked to me like they were throwing food out. If anything, there was always, we're short buns. We need some more ground beef. We need some more noodles. Like there was never anything that was thrown out that I remember.
it was, I think you were there. Do you recall that weekend I put up that new giant 20 by 30 tent?
Yes.
So when we were going through everything and we were dialing that in because we were trying to build a more functioning kitchen for the camp, bringing proper fridges and freezers and all that, we were doing all that. And there was a lot of stuff that was just crammed in coolers and this and that. And I mean, it wasn't like it was a regular thing and kept happening, but it was quite clear that there was a lack of organization on whoever maybe was in charge of the kitchen, or maybe there wasn't really anyone in charge, and that's why it happened. And there was like some, dairy products that got wasted, maybe a little bit of vegetables and meat, but it wasn't like, people were like, she makes it sound like, Katie bought $1,000 of groceries that went in the garbage. And, like that's just not accurate. And I question, I mean, she called herself the camp director at one
Something like
point.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
would the camp director be on one of her tasks if she said she was, handling all the departments, like a functioning kitchen, like, I mean, when I kind of put in myself, or was put into a leadership role and kind of rose up, everything was like a well-oiled machine. That kitchen, boom, it was functioning, pumping out hundreds of meals. There was no waste. The people in charge would give us lists. This is what we need, please, if we can get it. That was what would get bought for them, because it would be supplementing the stuff that wasn't getting donated, because some people were donating some food too. But when you're cooking for hundreds of people, several or a couple meals a day, you burn through supply.
Quickly. And
Really
it's not even
quickly.
just that. It's because the crowd was always fluctuating too, right? Like who knows how much you're supposed to have. One day you've got 50 people, the next day you've got 40 people, the next day you've got 150 people. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so you're running out and you want to make sure that you've got enough. And you're correct, the refrigerator. The first time I went there, she told me, you got to stop at the Home Hardware and get a fan for this trailer that we want to refrigerate. Right. I'm not sure if they ever used the thing, but I managed to get this thing at the last second before all the stores closed in Revy there. But that's the kind of thing people would do. They would go out and they would, if you were on the road someplace, Katie or Karen or you would call and say, hey, look, while you're out there, can you pick up so blah, 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 if you're in Vernon or wherever you happen to be, right? Because that's just the way it operated. And nobody said, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh yeah, and you would bring the receipt, and they would reimburse you for.
Yeah. Well, I personally, again, my own personal perspective is I never did that. I never cared to get the money back.
For the most part. But if people were asked to do that, like they would have no problem, like, here you go, here's your money, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So mismanagement of money. Well, what about the wine bottles?
Well, right away that got addressed. Right when that happened, it became like a controversy, like, so it wasn't like a new thing she's bringing up here. And like, Katie bought a case of wine for one of her family members that she thought they wanted. They didn't end up wanting it. She paid for that with her own money. and she thought it would be a nice treat to just keep it and have it for, you know, people that were volunteer stuff. Julie said herself she drank 3 bottles, right? So I mean, that's actually
She drank 3 bottles. What she said was, I had 3 bottles. She didn't say she drank it. We got to be specific
yeah,
here.
I'm not saying Julie sat there and pounded 3 bottles, but you know, she was given 3, and great. I'm glad she was, right? But
Yeah.
I, you know, like, what was it? What were the? Was everyone at like a Nazi war camp or something? You like the public. Some of these haters, it's like, why did you have a drink? Why
Yeah.
did you have a cigarette? Why? Like people were there volunteering, supporting the family, raising awareness for these ostriches, but they were also human beings. Like, do people not go home from work, have a beer or a wine if that's their thing, or you know, something like that? So I'm not really a big wine drinker. I didn't drink any wine. I have the odd drink, you know, or whatever. But I can't even believe that is like a, oh my lord, like there was a case of wine. Katie gave to the volunteers.
Everything is such a great big controversy. Now, in this particular clip, she's going to talk about John Catsimatidis. Now, he's a billionaire. He's American. I remember talking to him on the phone quite often while I was there, and they were coming up with ways that they could get the word out. And John, because he's a billionaire, offered up some money for legal fees. Here's Julie's impression of it.
Are these large legal bills that have come up, and I believe it's more than 50% that are still unpaid, or a figure of about $300,000 outstanding in legal bills.
Yeah.
Based on what you witnessed with the amount of money coming in and all these accounts that have come out since with how much has been fundraised,
Right.
does that trouble you? Does that make any sense to you at all? There's this much unpaid?
No, it does not make any sense to me at all. It is the reason that I'm still speaking out about this. I kind of wanted to just let it go. I wanted to leave it in the past, but I can't stand by and watch good-hearted people give their money to a cause that it's just like there's no accounting for where the money's going whatsoever, and it's being misused. Like there is absolutely no way why those debts, or no reason why those debts shouldn't be paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was, I mean, I knew that the people providing the feed for the ostriches hadn't been paid, you know, like that kind of thing. Like, why hasn't that been paid yet? You know, or the lawyers' bills. We also read, whether it was true or not, but there was the man from the States, John Catsimatidis. Mm-hmm. He had said that he would pay the legal bills. He had said he would pay the legal bills.
Wow.
So why did you even need any other money?
Jeff?
Like, you know, Julie was long gone before most of these things even happened, or before, like, I mean, if she by her own admission left by June, there was like July, August, September, October, November. That's when the legal battle really grew, for one, and then edged towards Supreme Court. So I mean, she would only be able to speak on June, and I don't even know if she has those exact whatever people were, or what they were paying to lawyer bills. But like, how does she know what was paid when along the way? You know, the payments that a lot of us that were around for the duration watched the family pay. So you know, I think um it's a little crazy. John Catsimatidis paying all the bills. Well, we all know he gave.
Didn't he agreed to pay what, $25,000 towards the league?
Sears, who's another American billionaire, a buddy of John. I guess John reached out to him, and Andy threw in 10 G's too. So that $35,000 went straight to the lawyers. The family did need, like, it's not like it went to the family, then they paid the lawyers. That transaction, John Catsimatidis and his friend, or I think it probably came from one source in the end, but it went right directly to the lawyers. So I think the reason why people like Julie and definitely the hate groups and stuff are carrying this is because I think it was CTV, if I recall. They aired a clip, and it was like American billionaire pays legal fees for ostrich farm in Edgewood, BC. And we all know how the mainstream media works. They're not technically lying. Yeah, he paid legal fees. He just didn't pay all the legal fees.
They are lying. It's a lie of omission.
Yeah,
Is what it is.
exactly. No, it's gross, really. And it was addressed right away. Katie, if you recall, put a post up, was public about how much John had contributed and Andy had contributed, and definitely was 100% transparent about that. Everybody knew. It was all over social media. There's no way Miss Julie didn't know that. Come on, let's be realistic. Everybody knew that. And it really actually hurt the family more than, not the donation obviously helped them, but the CTV clip that suggested that their legal bills were covered actually hindered, people.
More donations. Yeah, they thought, well, it's all covered. I don't have to worry about it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So by no means did the family get their legal fees covered by John Castamedias, other than 35,000, and by no means did the publicity around it benefit them in any way, shape, or form.
Right. What do you think Julie's under what circumstances did she leave the farm?
There was all that drama, like when Jim Kerr came right away. She
We're
didn't.
gonna get to Kerr later on.
Yeah,
But
that's what it was about, like drama through that situations, and then developing onwards of butting heads with individuals, right? I think it got to a point where the family was like, well, if that's how you feel, it's probably best if you leave. Because I believe Julie got a little kind of more demanding, like, she's by her own mission said, I told them I think it should be this way, or I don't think Katie is the right person to handle the money. Like, why would it be a supporter's choice who the Ostrich Farm family chooses to handle that stuff? Like, why would it be my choice? Why would it be your choice? Why would it
because
be
she's the camp director, Jeff.
I'm the camp director, right?
Like, it seemed kind of self-appointed to me. And you're absolutely correct when you say that. When I showed up, I show up as a journalist, right? And I was watching everything for 2.5 weeks. I watched everything. I watched interactions between people. I watched their facial expressions, their body language. I watched everything just so I could get a read on what these people were all about. And it seemed to me that Julie was somebody who felt like she was the smartest person in the room and the only one that could handle what was going on there. And heaven forbid Katie should ever have her hands on any money, because she's a fuck up. That's what I think Julie thinks. That's an opinion.
She's kind of saying it with what she said without saying it, right?
Yeah, right. She's trying to be nice about it. But I mean, this boils down to interpersonal dynamics. And for some reason, she still got an axe to grind, and she's making stuff up. I mean, to me, that's out of bounds. And there's a lot of stuff I know that happened at the Ostrich Farm that had absolutely nothing to do with the family at all. And I'm not willing to talk about it, because you know what? Some things just need to stay where they are. And that's all there is to it. You put a group of 100, 150, and during Farm Aid there, I'm not sure how many people came through the weekend.
Yeah, through then, and then September, gosh, when Tamara was there and Jimmy Nix.
Yeah, it was great.
That was the busiest weekend I've seen there in the whole time, and that was, I think we pushed close to 500 people. The PLT team was shocked. The cars were coming in like a convoy off the highway.
What happens when you get all of these people in the same area together? Obviously, there's going to be some people that pair off and go out to the bush or find a trailer or an empty,
who knows,
whatever. And I know about a lot of that stuff, but why on earth? And it's not my business to come out publicly and say, oh, by the way, so and so was cheating on his wife or his husband or her husband. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
But here's Julie speculating, where's Katie's husband?
You mentioned it started with sort of the Freedom Convoy crowd, but then as it started to gain traction, a lot of influencers and media personalities started showing up. What did that do to the atmosphere on the farm when you started having some different personalities like that showing up?
It started to create more of a divide. One thing is, it started to create more of a divide. We found that the people, Katie in particular, like, they would pay more attention to those influencers. My concern was that I knew some of those influencers, I guess you would call them, and they've got bad histories. They're not very well respected. And not just because they're not liked because of their right-wing views or whatever, but personal issues, allegations against them, major personality flaws.
Yeah.
Major personality flaws. Yeah.
Now, while you were out on the farm,
Well, I know who she's talking about there. I'm not going to say it, but I know who she's talking about there.
did Katie's husband ever come to the farm at all? Was he ever seen as part of this?
Never.
No. Okay. So you haven't
Never.
met him?
No. I was there for almost 3 months and I didn't ever see him. I've heard that maybe he went out to the farm once in
Okay.
all of this time. And she had been there since just after April 16th, after the hearing in Vancouver. That was the first time Katie was at the farm, by the way. She didn't
Really?
live there. She wasn't involved with anything. She didn't do any of the farming. She just came after the hearing on April 16th. And she just never went home. And
Wow.
that was part of the question, is everyone's like, you have a husband, you have not young children, but she's got children in a farm, a hobby farm. That was always the question. Why are you not going home?
Okay. What's that all about?
I don't know really.
So, okay, so hold on. You've already answered off the top of the show, but I see that more and more people have shown up here to watch this live, and it's going to be available on all the social media platforms later on in case you can't stay. But at the beginning of the show tonight, one of the first questions I asked, and I know this answer already, but I asked Jeff kind of as a joke between the two of us. Jeff, did you have an affair with Katie Pasidney?
Yeah,
And we laughed, right?
I kind of giggled. Of course I didn't. As much as the haters and the hate groups obviously are spreading misinformation, they always try to. Nobody tried to be malicious towards me until I kind of rose to the occasion. Till I said, okay, I need to take on a role for this family and this fight. It was particularly when the CFIA took over. I kind of was willing to be right up there and like put myself in that pressure spot. And it seemed like when I really started taking a stand for the farm, all of a sudden people wanted to attack. And it's sad. Me and Katie were more like brother and sister. Esper
But
was my
you said you've frozen on the screen, by the way. We can still hear you, but your face is kind of frozen into a
yeah, probably might have to
yeah, go out and come back in. There you are.
okay.
You said that her husband, Troy,
Yeah.
did come out to the farm.
Yeah, I met Troy. He came out. Well, I've met him a couple times, like not a lot, but I definitely met him.
And
In the summertime, he came out. I happened to be there when he was there. He was there a couple days, like kind of over the same weekend I was. I got to know him a bit. Yeah, as much as you can in a couple days. Had a beer with him. Great guy. I really liked him. I mean, in my opinion, I'm a husband. I have a wife, and we have a family and a home. So both of us couldn't, with what I was doing at the Ostrich farm, there would be no way both of us could commit to something like that at the same time, right? Because we have a home to keep, you have to make sure, the income's rolling in, you have family to take care of, whatever it may be, pets. So I always looked at it like that, like he's got a business, they have a family, they have a home, they have a hobby farm. She's out here fighting this cause. I would assume Troy or her husband was at home, holding down the fort, because that's what my wife was doing when I was at the Universal Ostrich Farm, right? So I didn't ever really seen it as anything. Katie would go home when she had opportunities to, but she was committed to to her mother's farm and to the family cause.
the funny thing about that, you're right in saying that. Whenever I saw Katie just kind of off by herself, which wasn't very often because somebody was always tugging on her arm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're frozen again, by the way. You want to pop out and come back in. But, there was always something going on. She never had a moment. So how on earth could she, with her state of mind too, and the way she is, how could she have taken a couple of days to go home and then come back and to go home and forget about everything and then come back? I mean, I understand the stress, the strain that would put on any marriage, on any family. I totally understand. But it seems to me that Troy is a pretty understanding dude and realized exactly how committed she was and still is to this cause.
Yeah, that's what I always assumed. It was never something that we ever really, discussed. We were all just so committed to what was going on, functioning and this and that. And, like we just we didn't really talk about those things. They weren't important. The cause was the focus point. So, it was the outside world, the people that are surfing the net and trolling, like that was their concerns. Like we were fighting for the fight of your life, like a fight that has never actually been fought in Canada before the way it was. That was a Canadian first. It was something that very well could dictate a change one day in the future. So I mean, all these things that the outside world or a handful of people were focusing on just never really were in the minds of those who were like in the moment, in the element, right?
It's amazing to me that all of that stuff was happening. And you're right, on the outside, all of the people and all of the groups going, I wonder what's going on with her. Hey, she hasn't seen her husband in months, right? Like that's not anything that anybody ever, in my experience, anybody ever brought up at the farm when I was there.
Yeah,
And
it was never really a focal point of discussion with people I knew. Any of the people I hung out with, everybody, right? But
yeah,
I just, those things weren't important. We would tell each other about our lives. Everybody knew, like we all knew we had families and this and that. Like within our inner core, we were so close. We were like a family, right? Like, so I mean, yeah, I mean, we didn't focus on any of that outside banter and stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people like would make well, Katie, why doesn't she defend herself? Because
she didn't even realize.
you just keep doing what you do. You let those people do what they do, and you focus. You keep your eyes on the prize, right?
You try.
You try.
One last clip here where Julie decides she wants to name names, at least one name. Here.
And where you realized that something wasn't right.
I think when I saw the amount of just the ridiculous behavior of Katie and Jim Kerr, just the way that they ran around the place, like they just, I mean, good on them. They were having the time of their lives. They were having the summer of their lives, but the money was going sideways. The behavior was sideways. Just the arrogance was really hard to take. And the way, when I saw that somebody like Jim was going to be given that kind of responsibility, instead of, there were so many people there, good, smart people. They owned their own businesses. Like some of the people that were there because their jobs allowed them to be there, right? And they would have had the kind of experience and knowledge that could have helped things run smoothly. And when I saw that she chose him and let him be in charge of things and not others that had been around longer with maybe more experience, with a bit more of a rational head on their shoulders, that was, yeah.
What's she inferring?
Sorry? Well, I think she's basically saying, like,
Why do you
think
keep freezing on the screen? It's annoying.
I don't, my friend. Here, let me switch.
Go to a hard wire if you can.
Is that better?
Well, I can hear you. Yeah, there. That's better. Okay.
Okay, perfect. I sensed from my perspective, and I shared it on my live yesterday. She felt threatened by Jim because she was the camp director, I guess, when Jim kind of rolled in, and I don't think when she says Jim was put in a power position, I don't think that's what it was. I think Jim came in, and his purpose there was to spread a message for the Universal Ostrich Farm because they were having trouble getting that message out to a vast amount of people at that time. And he came along, he was sharing it before he came, spreading their message, and he chose to come out. And I think things were rapidly growing at that time because of that extra, attention the farm was starting to get. And so I think that Katie was naturally just working with Jim right out the gate. Like, yeah, like this is what my job here is. That's what Katie was doing, the spokesperson for the farm, getting the awareness out. How do we do that? You have the ability to do that. Teach me, show me how this works, kind of thing. And I think, together they were doing that all the time. I mean, this comment of time of their life, well, according to Julie, she was having the time of her life in her interview. She loved the camping, sitting by the fire vibe, clearly having wines and this and that. So I don't know
I
if
saw her more than once sitting by the campfire, drinking and staggering back to her trailer at the end.
I'm not going to say I didn't see it either, ever.
I mean, like, let's be honest here. I mean, the way she makes it seem is that she was
I
there.
thought it was pretty sad. You're pointing these things out. Well, that's the teapot calling the kettle out. Like,
Right? I mean, you're in a situation, and I suppose, in a way, you went to Freedom Convoy in Ottawa.
yeah, you bet.
I was here at Freedom Convoy in the Winnipeg area, which not nearly as big, and not nearly as let's just say
Rowdy?
social. No, social, and maybe not as rowdy. Also,
Yeah, no, it was social at Freedom Convoy. People drank, people celebrated. Like,
drank. They made friends. They found people from different parts of the country, like somebody from New Brunswick or somebody from Alberta, with the same mindset, with the same Canadian mindset.
you
And
bet.
these are friends that you make for life, right? It just seems that way to me. And
My friends that I met there that are like some of my closest friends in the world today, right?
yeah, and I'll tell you something else that I would say, without having the experience of Ottawa, that in many ways the Ostrich farm, although spread out over the course of a much longer time frame, was a lot like the Freedom Convoy.
I'm
I mean,
glad
Jeff,
you said that, because honestly, when I went there right at the beginning, Shadow, one of my things was to observe, meet the family, understand what they were fighting for, understand everything. And over my first few visits, when I developed my commitment, because I'm the type of guy, like the Freedom Convoy stuff, I drive across the country in the dead of winter if I'm committed to something, right? So, when as I was figuring that out, what I realized is this exactly aligns with the values of why we were in Ottawa in 2022. It was a different situation, a different entity of government, but it was overreach. It was about crushing the little guy. It was about controlling the little guy. It was about setting the narrative. And instantly I was like, this is that fight right here, closer to home. And it's real. And the people that were behind it were genuine people. And I was like, let's go. And to be honest, I knew at that moment, I'm seeing this through. And this is back in, that was after a few visits, so sometime early May. And here we are today, Shadow, March 2026, the next year, and we're dealing with the aftermath, dealing with like, part of being committed to a cause is being there in those good times, sitting by the fire, kumbaya, and
there
having.
was, I mean, you know what? People make fun. They use that expression, oh, kumbaya moment. Well, that's what it was.
It was the times you were there. I remember singing by the fire. You were on the guitar. Hal was on the accordion. We were jamming out the oldies. It was a beautiful moment. But committed to the cause is that moment, and it's the moment the CFIA takes over, and it's at that harshest climate. It's the moment those birds are getting slaughtered by the government, and it's also dealing with the aftermath of the scenario. Being committed is start to finish, and that's why we're doing this today. That's why I've been defending the family, not defending the family, but sharing my perception, which aligns with a defense, I guess. And it's because this is what you do. You commit even when it's tough.
Yeah.
Even when you get to that mountain and the hike starts going uphill, that's when you kick it into high gear and you see it through. So, I figured that out back in the spring of 2025 that that's how it was going to be. And here we are, So you're right. It was the Freedom Convoy in Eastern British Columbia. It wasn't a convoy, but it was Ottawa. It was that same thing. Canadians coming together, standing up for the little guy, defending the future of our children. Because if we don't do that, what do we do?
And the camaraderie also is something, I mean, the second time I came out, I brought Maggie Hope Braun with.
Yeah.
And she was fantastic out there too, I mean, Drea Humphrey from Rebel was out there. I think Mr. Sunshine Baby came out there with his Dristan or whatever, Otrivin, no spray. He wanted. There was, and I don't know how somebody like Julie can sit back and say, oh, all these influencers come out. And when the influencers come out, all the division started. What I can say is, people have accused me of being an Ostrich Farm supporter and not a journalist. And I can say, you know what? I'm a hybrid.
I'm a journalist, but yeah, that's my new definition in life. I'm defined.
You're not a journalist, you're an Ostrich supporter.
I'm one of the main Ostrich Farm supporters.
Yeah, right. You're forever going to be known as Ostrich Man. But I said, okay, so you go and spend 2.5 weeks. You want to get to know everything about how the thing operates. You want to know, how the people are dealing with the situation. And you can't do that from afar. You can't stand back 100 feet and watch.
No, yeah. Even when I was at home watching on the days I wasn't there, it's different than when you're right in that moment. And that's what I find funny about, the way the world watches things like this. They see it through a lens.
Yeah.
A lens and a perspective in a moment without the context of the world around it. And, it's very easy to paint pictures, to draw conclusions, and, to not understand. Because I tell you, every person that came out there, even the ones that came for a couple hours, they were like, I'm so glad I came. Like, I get it. I feel it now. I understand for myself.
Yeah. And for me being there, of course, you're going to get close to some people. That's natural. That's human, right? I've made friends with you. We're friends for life now, you and me.
Yeah.
And, but that does not stop me from asking you difficult questions. And you knew that was going to happen.
What I love about you. You're one of Canada's, like, transparent journalists, like, even grill a friend, like, and maybe that Anthony Russo guy could learn something from you. He's a young guy trying to be a journalist, like, why not take an angle like this, ask questions, but want to know transparent answers, not want to paint a picture, especially when individuals out there are like, hey, I'm here to talk to you if you want to ask me questions.
Well, don't just sit there and read off a list of questions off a piece of paper that you worked out. I mean, it's a conversation, and you're in the conversation, and you adjust the questions that you have based upon the flow of the conversation, the vibe of the conversation. I think that I want to wrap this up tonight, Jeff, by both of us telling a story of joy from the Ostrich Farm, but also telling a story of harrowing terror. And I'll start, if you don't mind, with a story of happiness. There was one night after the campfire, everybody was going to bed, and the family put me up in one of those rooms up in the second floor of the house there. And I was expecting to sleep in my car, to be honest, but they said, nope, you're going to be up in that room up there, the one without the windows, the room.
The middle room, yeah.
Yeah, the middle room. And so I was going to go in, and I just stopped. I stopped before going in the door. And pitch black, but still 21 degrees. It was a beautiful night. And I'm just looking up at the stars. And because it's such a remote place, there's no light bleed from a major city like 20 miles down the road. It's just, and you're in the mountains, you're in the heart of those mountains. And I'm looking up going, my God, this is amazing. This is so amazing. And Katie, she was there the whole time. And I guess I was talking to myself. She goes, what's amazing? And I said, look. Now, when you're when you're out there and you live your life out there like that, I guess it's easy to take things for granted. For me, being a flatlander, it was one of the most amazing things. And she just stood there with me, looking up at the stars, and she goes, "You're right." I can't even tell you how long we were standing there. It could have been 5 minutes. It could have been a half an hour, but it was amazing. Just for me personally, in that moment, because it was a moment that removed you from the tension and the strife of every day, knowing that the RCMP could be rolling down the street at any time. We knew that we were always living under that knife all the time. And
Yes.
in a moment like that, after people had had a good time at the campfire singing songs, that to me was the end of a fantastic night. And, I just wanted to thank everybody who I met at the Ostrich farm. Family, you, Doug, Jody, Kelly, Darcy, all of the great people that I met out there who I'm always going to remember fondly, just for a moment like that. You're next. What story you want to tell?
That's going to be hard to top, my friend. I remember that night, and I think that's the night we were all singing by the fire, and that I would imagine. I never got to experience that last moment, but mine might be a little more corny, and some people might laugh out there because not everybody has the same beliefs as me. But we just ended Farm Aid, or no, we were ending Farm Aid. It was Sunday. Pastor Art had just preached. I was a little ran down. Me and you were roommates that weekend. I remember, right?
Yeah.
And so we were going to bed late, waking up early. It was hot. It was, and we were down by the river. Sure, you could jump in the river, but it was like 100 degrees, and everyone was drained, dehydrated. And Art did that speech, and I remember he said, let's go baptize people down the river. Who wants to be baptized? And a bunch of people kind of just went down there. And
Perspective. I mean, Art was wearing a full suit when he did the sermon that morning.
Yeah.
35 degrees and blazing.
I was feeling off that day, like I just was like, oh, like I was going home at the end of that day, and I was like, oh, we got to get all this. I was focused on we got to get the work done and the cleanup now, and and then I was like, Art was going down there, and I wasn't going to go down at first, and then like I was walking towards my pickup, and something just was like, go down to the river, Jeff. And so I threw on my shorts and I grabbed a towel and I walked down, and I leaned against that log, that was kind of after the first little creek and on the little island. And there was 30 or 40 people there, and someone was standing there, and Art was baptizing them, and Marty was helping them, dipping into the deep part. And I've been baptized when I was a kid. I was a believer at a young age. I was lucky enough to have my parents weren't really into it too much, but my grandma would take me to Sunday school, and I got to know the Lord pretty young. And but I hadn't been baptized in 35 years or whatever. And as much as I have a connection with Christ, I felt in that moment, maybe you're a little distant, because something was calling me. And after watching a whole bunch of people there get baptized, I was like, you know what? A lot of people get rebaptized to reestablish, their commitment. So as a growing man, I was like, you know what, I'm next. And Pastor Art, he asked me some questions, and then him and Marty baptized me. And in that moment, I hit that water, and I came out, and no word of a lie, my head was as clear as it had been in months. That fog that was there earlier in the day was gone. And like I don't know if it was just the energy of everybody and God and that place, and just how special of a place it is to me in general. But it was, I think about it still to this day. I think about it regularly, that moment with those people. And the haters, they made fun of it. I published it because I was so proud, and I loved that moment so much, and I thought it was such a beautiful experience in the middle of all this. Farm Aid, a whole bunch of people renewed their faith, and a whole bunch of people found the Lord. And I remember
over 50 of them, I recall. I remember watching it.
Monty came to me, and he was like, Jeff, he's like, I never ever thought, he would say, I'll never embrace embrace this stuff. And that day he embraced it, and he still does to this day. And he said to me, he said, Jeff, it's real, isn't it? And I said, oh, you bet it is, brother. And, like to me, that was there was so many happy moments. But, for me, that was the most memorable moment. It was such a combination of fellowship, spirituality, a reinforcement, everything all at once, brother. It was great. I believe
Okay.
you were there.
I'm gonna tell you a harrowing moment that I had. I wasn't there at the end like you were, so you will have the last say on this one. But for me, it was one morning. It was very early. It was about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and alarms started ringing all over the property. And people, you could hear feet hitting the floor as they were getting out of bed. Like, what the hell? This may have been my second or third day, and I had no concept of what was going on. Somebody had called in that there was a convoy of police officers or white vehicles coming down the twisting highway and the Monashee. And I went, holy, whoa. So I got up, put something on, and went running out there with everybody right to the road. And it was like Heartbeat City. Here we come, right? Like there's something coming. This is bad. People are prepared. What got me more than anything was people were willing to lay in front of these cars that were coming down the road there, Langille Road, to stop these guys from getting to the ostriches. They weren't going to be violent about it, but they were willing to lay their bodies down in front of these vehicles so the cars couldn't pass. And the panic of that morning was like, here it is. This is it. Right. And people were wondering, were these guys, did they come in from Vernon? Did they come in from Kelowna? Were they at some kind of a secret spot that we didn't see that was within 5 miles of the farm? Nobody knew. And there were drones up looking, patrolling to see. And then the drones, too, that would come over sometimes. It was like, what are these guys doing? Like they're reconning the place? Crazy.
Pretty much, yeah.
But in that moment, we thought, this is it. This is how it's going to go down. And it didn't. Turned out to be a false alarm, which was a huge relief to everybody. And then, after an hour or so, people calmed down. The adrenaline rush kind of went away. And, we sat and thought maybe this is, the opening act of something horrible yet to come, even though we were hoping against hope that everything was going to be okay. And you, I guess at the end, the photo I put up for the show tonight, the thumbnail that people are going to see on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook and X, is you with a megaphone and your fist up in the air. And I think you were yelling at the RCMP at that stage, yeah?
It was the CFIA, yeah.
The CFIA, both of them.
I have a couple moments. You say that the most terrified, but there was two moments that brought the energy to that level. One, and it wasn't the terror moment, but it was the most where you gotta dig as deep as you can in that moment, as deep as you. That's what you're built for moment. And this was similar to your moment. It was the night it actually did happen, though. We got notification the hotels were filling up in Vernon. We had people everywhere watching for us, right? We knew exactly where the cops and the CFIA were all setting up, where they were staying for the night. It was very clear they were getting ready to come. The next morning, right on target. We knew when they wanted to get there, so we knew that meant they had to be leaving Vernon at 4 a.m. Sure enough, the phones rang. They're gearing up. The cars are starting. They're on their way. We knew we had 2 hours, and we were building up to those 2 hours. And I knew what my role was. I already committed to the family. I would be that guy because I knew Karen and Dave and Katie were going to be in those pens. They needed to protect their birds. And I committed to them. I will be that guy. I promise you. I will not be that guy for you. I won't run. I'll face it. And so it was moments before the CFIA rolled in. We knew they were just moments up the highway. And Karen and Katie and Dave were standing at the edge of the fence. And we look over and we see this convoy that never is ending. Because, you know, from that side, you could see the highway a couple
Yeah.
mile stretch. And it was like, here they're coming, which means they're only a few minutes from around the corner. And a lot of the supporters had parked their vehicles along Langell and did whatever to try to make it so that it was going to be slow for them to come. And they all geared up at the end of that highway, and there was hundreds of them up there, cops and guys in SWAT gear and CFIA and PLT and an army. And I started walking by myself up that road to this line of cops and
By the mailboxes, like right at the corner there?
well, just up a little bit, as far as they could get up, you know, a couple 100 meters up from where someone had set up some stuff they couldn't drive by.
How many of them were there?
I would say a couple hundred if you add all the cops, all the CFIA, everything. Because from what I was told later on, they sent in everything day one because they didn't know, and then they split into shifts at that kind of point, right? So for me, walking up to that moment, because I had a couple 100 meters as I'm walking up to this line, I'm like, are these guys going to just take me down? Like the second I get to them, am I just going to be like, boom, down, hogtied back in back of a hub car?
You don't know. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not a professional police negotiator. I'm a dad, a tradesman, truck driver, a freedom advocate, you know. So I'm walking up, and that for me was the moment that, you know, I really had to dig deep, and I really had to process how to maintain myself in that moment when I arrived there. And I'll never forget it. It was like an hour and a half it took to do a 2-minute walk in my mind as it was processing up. And I remember one of the longtime supporters, he had his drill mount and he droned my walk like up to these guys, and I got to watch it afterwards. And it was almost surreal for me, you know, processing, reliving through that moment. The most terrifying moment, Shadow, and
No, but before you go on, how did, like, when you watched the video of you walking, because that's a movie moment.
it
Right.
was. It looks like a movie if you watch the drone footage. It's what you see in one of those It's almost corny.
Was your walk any different than normal? Like, were you walking
It looked
slow?
pretty
Was it?
confident to me. It looked like I was just steadily focused on, you know, what I was doing. And Debbie is a correctional officer.
Yeah.
So she uh, um goes to, if Debbie's watching, I love you, Debbie. If she goes to those events, like the police world games, correctional officers, firemen, and police go to them. So she had a jacket, and it was the 20 something police law enforcement world games, and she's like, you should wear this. So I had this jacket on, this official jacket that only law enforcement, correctional officers and stuff have. And I walked up and they were very like open to me right away. And then
One of us, guys. He's one of us.
after a while, one of them actually said, hey, like, where do you get the jacket? Like, what do you do? And I didn't want to say anything at first because I thought at this moment, this is a power tool. Debbie was right. She's like, this jacket will work to your advantage. And they gave me a lot of respect. I confronted them bluntly. I said, you know, my name is Jeff. I'm a supporter of the farm. I'm not an owner. I'm here to let you know that this is our position. We want to be safe. We don't want to be violent. We don't want to go down that path.
Wait. Like, you got out to the end of the road and there's all these cop cars. Were they encircling you, or was it just
They were all
one?
in a giant line. So from a kind of where that fire hall was, from there
Yeah.
all the way up to the end, around the corners, and way up the highway. Like they were like the whole. It just stretched for quite a while,
So
and then
who was it who
kind of walked up to that kind of front area.
who was it who spoke to you? Were the guys in the lead car, or was it a bunch of guys from
So
four
if
cars?
you recall Paul, the one officer that would come all the time, he was there
The fat
along
guy.
with some PLT officers. So my first interaction was with Paul and PLT because Paul knew who I was.
Right,
So
right.
Paul could say, verify that's Jeff. he's safe. He represents the family or whatever. So then the PLT confronted me. Now those guys, their job is to be your friend. Let's not be naive. They're police negotiators, but they're still cops. A lot of them are sergeants. They're actually cops that are picked to go into those roles and stuff. They basically, I said my piece, they said their piece. They're like, yeah, we want the same thing. They said these guys are going to get in there eventually, and we're going to be forced to do it physically if we can't come up with a plan eventually, is kind of how they put it. So we just tried to stall as long as we possibly could, Shadow. I would walk all the way back to the pens, give the family info, then I would waste some time, sit there in the pickup I would hop the fence, I'd climb in the pens and hang out for a
How
bit.
were you feeling in that moment though when you were talking to these guys? I mean, well, not the fat RCMP officer. I forget his name again. What's his name?
Paul.
Doug made a joke one time. He said, "Look at it. Must be like dressing a grape."
He was a decent guy. I mean,
yeah, I thought he was all right too. But I mean, if you're a decent guy, you know the difference between right and wrong.
you absolutely, yes, you do.
So in the moment that you're talking to these outreach officers, and you'd been through it before, it wasn't your first time talking to these guys. I mean, even I spent time talking to those guys while I was there because they made
yeah, exactly, yeah,
quite often. I mean, were you terrified on the inside, and you knew that you could not show that to them?
I wasn't that. I was nervous because I didn't want to see anybody get hurt. And I knew in my mind, I'd already, like, we had talked for a while. We had planned for this, like,
but
moment.
you're standing there, Jeff, against an overwhelming force of armed men.
I should have been terrified.
And you experienced that in Ottawa when they came and they started kettling the people in the streets after the Illegal Emergencies Act was declared. And by the way, the federal government is appealing it now. Today was their deadline, and they got their appeal into the Supreme Court with 10 minutes to spare. Amazing. You're talking about 100 armed men, and some of them with itchy fingers.
Some of them looked like they wanted to, like, pounce on me right off the gate. Like they were thinking they were coming in for that scenario. A lot of those guys.
Yeah.
And I was nervous. But you know what was on my mind? How do we buy time? Like, honestly, that was my biggest thing. Like, how do we buy time? So I would do those walks back and forth for the first couple hours, to them, back to the family, back to them, pretending like it was taking time. And, I forgot what this said. And, playing dumb.
Why didn't they just roll right in?
And then, unfortunately, that thing happened, the incident with Lois.
Right.
End of the road, and I'm negotiating with the cops, and over their radios, I hear there's an incident at Lois's, and I look at the cops, and the cops look at me, and we're like, "Great, how are we gonna handle this?"
Explain the incident, because there's people who know kind of about this incident.
Someone who was a supporter of the farm ended up hitting Lois, and it's a shame. A lot of people tried to attack me online. They said, "Oh, you condone this. You think it's funny." There was a point one night where I laughed about how chaotic this situation is. Not particularly Lois being punched, but I let out a chuckle of, like, I can't believe how nuts of what is going on. And that got portrayed as me laughing at Lotus. But I want to set the record on that, Shadow, because it's something that actually I didn't condone, and I was actually against, and I was very angry that happened. I feel like we were working with the police and the liaisons, and we were trying to establish something. That individual did that stupid move. Who the frick for one hits a 75-year-old lady? I mean, that's just kind of bizarro, if you ask me. And that all went down. But what that did, Shadow, is it rushed the process.
You got a little bit of a white in the corner there.
You know what I mean? It rushed the process, Shadow. It made it so they got closer faster.
Yeah.
because now we had to address the situation at Lois's house.
Well, now
So
they've got a reason too, right? Oh, there's violence inside. We're here to.
let some of them in to go deal with that. So we negotiated, okay, you guys come in, and then we walk back out and continue negotiations. But in order to do that, someone had to move a van that was across the road. So as soon as that was done, of course, the line moves forward, right? That's what they're always trying to do, is move the line forward. That's their mission. So yeah, it was sad that that happened, and I believe it was counterproductive, not to our image, just our image, but also to uh,
Morale.
what we already had going on, and the work we were already doing.
Explain the mood. I mean, people must have been on edge. You were trying your best to keep it together. I know
People,
that
yeah,
you
people.
describe yourself as a hothead sometimes. I actually, I don't find that, but
Well, yeah, I
when,
definitely occasionally.
I suppose we all can be when we're faced with an unimaginably frustrating and terrifying situation like 80 or 100 armed officers coming in to occupy your property. I mean, that's outrageous in a free and democratic society. Who would ever think that something like
It,
that would happen?
Bizarro. I felt like I was in Bizarro world. Like I couldn't even believe it.
Yeah, I still can't wrap my head around it. Um, and I'm amazed that people out there actually accept that as normal. That terrifies me.
It got normal. That was the weird part. After a while, it was our daily norm. And I don't even know how that it turned into the daily norm. And then at the end, you have to unwind out of that daily norm and get back into an actual normal, routine again. But like it was an odd day. We did everything we could to hold them off, but unfortunately, that event made it so that they got closer faster. We ultimately know they eventually got to that fence. They pushed through, took over. My next role at that point was to make sure we all stayed, and that was my point. My role moving forward: safety, and that we stay. And because if we weren't able to show the world what was going on, it was going to be for nothing. These birds were going to die for nothing. No one was going to know what this beast of a machine did. So from that point forward, it was keep the peace between the people and the machine across the street. And that wasn't always an easy task. It was stressful day in, day out. At the end of the day, I would just disappear, go to sleep. It got to the point where I had to always be focusing and doing on stuff. I wasn't sitting by the fire. I wasn't enjoying the evenings the way we did. And
How
that's
could you?
what I mentioned before about that start to finish commitment, when it's good, when it's bad, when it's really bad. I adjusted just who I was and my role and my position and my mindset as it went on, until we unfortunately finally got to that, what would be my most terrifying moment, I would say, the ultimate, the climax of it all.
900 to 1,000 shots fired in the dark of night.
I remember
330 dead
that's
ostriches.
the yelling that you mentioned earlier on the side of the highway through the microphones. I think CBC aired a clip online with me actually swearing and screaming at the CFIA, and it was like one of CBC's most ever air, of course, watched clips, and it's me losing my cool. So I think that's probably one of the big reasons why it's easy to say Jeff is a hothead. But my most terrifying moment was later in that evening. The cops. I was on the highway side, and the cops closed down the the road randomly out of the blue. We're not letting anybody back onto Langill Road. So all these protesters were stuck up on the highway. We were like, what is going on? So I raced. I hopped in my pickup and I raced, and there was a mother and a daughter, little girl, and they hopped in the back of my truck and they hid under some blankets in the back seats because I needed to get her and her daughter back to camp too. And I got up to the police line and I said, "You got to let me in." He's like, "Nope. Are you? Do you live here?" And I was like, "No, I don't live here. I'm the mediator. I'm one of the spokespeople. I stay here. I got a room, like I'm a regular." And nope, sorry, if it doesn't show it on your license, you can't come in. And I'm at this moment, I'm like, "Oh no." what's going on here. So I was like, let me speak to Henderson. I see the sergeant. I had developed a rapport with this head sergeant through the process, through the mediation, through the keeping the peace, luckily. And he's like, oh, you know Henderson? And I was like, tell Henderson to come talk to Jeff. And I seen him go over, and as soon as I guess he said that, Henderson's head popped up and he ran right over. And he's like, hey, and I was like, you gotta let me in, Henderson. I was like, I gotta be in there, because I could clearly tell something was happening. Like, it was shifting, it was going down. And he hemmed and hawed. He's like, okay, I'll let you in. And he's like, I'm letting Luke in, I'm letting Doug in, and that's it. No one else is coming in. And they opened up the roadblock and they let us in. And couple hours later, they let a couple other ladies in after things went down. That was the moment I realized, oh, they're gearing up. Right, we knew they were gearing up, but we didn't know it was going to be like we're starting after dinner kind of thing, right? And one of the PLT guys looked at me, and I was like, it's now, isn't it? And he's like, he just went like this, didn't even say anything. And I got mad at him. I was like, Kevin, you didn't communicate with me. You First time you really hooped us here. You left those people up on the highway. You didn't warn us. You didn't give me the opportunity to get these people back to safety, back to their camp. And he's like, what do you want me to do? Go arrest them? And I just looked at him and I pointed my finger at him and I said, Kevin, I'm very disappointed in you right now, man. And I hopped in my truck and I raced to the house and I said, it's happening now. And this is just as the sun was starting to go down. And
You could tell that the cop's attitude suddenly shifted, right?
like
In that
it was
moment.
like they were put on red alert mode or whatever, you know, because of what was gearing up for. Like, it was no more
Mr. Nice Guy.
that moment, right? It was red zone, lockdown, so on and so forth. And then as it got dark, pap, the first shot. And then pap, 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 pap. And people were stuck on the highway. And people were in camp going, what's going on? And Karen was like, oh my God, like we knew we lost the stay. Like, we just lost Supreme Court today. Like, it just happened. Like, you know, like the CFIA was ready to rock the whole way through. The whole plan was the second they lose the case, we're coming in and we're slaughtering these birds. That was the plan the whole way through. And that was the most diabolical night I've ever experienced in my 43 years on this planet, hands down. I think about it to this day. Sometimes I hear those shots. And
PTSD? If you got that?
a little bit, yeah. And it's funny because some of the liaison guys called me to check on me because they suffer from that stuff all the time, right, in their work. And they said, you know, like, we just want to see how you're doing, you know, because some of those guys, we ended up creating a level of respect because we made it so innocent people didn't get hurt and they got to stay, you know.
That's
I
a
know.
weird relationship, right? Like, I was thinking about that when you told me about that this afternoon. That this PLT guy texted you or called you out of the blue, like all these months later. Like, my first thought is, what are you calling it? Gloat? You son of
No,
a bitch.
he was just like, hey, Jeff, it's Ben. I just wanted, I've always, he said, I've been meaning to check in on you. And I was just like, hey, Ben, how you, the family knows Ben really well. He was the main PLT guy. And I was just like, I was just like, you know, not doing bad. I was straight. I was like, you know, a little PST or PTSD from everything, but I'm working through it, processing it, you know, getting back into my, my daily routine. And he's like, good, good. I'm glad you're working on it. It's so awesome. You know, you're back with your family, because we would talk about our families all the time and stuff like that. And then the next message, it actually, it gave me a little tiny bit of peace, because I don't have a lot of peace with the RCMP right now in my heart, and the CFIA, not the individuals, but the entity that it is. And he said to me, he's like, um, I would be wrong not to say that because of your work and your efforts, a lot of people never got hurt. And it was one of the most peaceful scenarios that we ever had to deal with like that. And I thank you for that. And you're a
What
good
do you
man.
mean a lot of people never got hurt? These are
Like,
trained peace officers.
well,
They
not them, I guess, but those scenarios where there's such a big tension and such a big standoff and such a thing, there's generally people that lose their cool
sure.
and shit goes down, right? And so what I thought at the end is we did something good. At least we somehow got through to the very end,
You
and I
prevented the cops from hurting people.
well, and just staying, because I thought along the way, if these people if we ever lose our cool in the wrong way, they're going to come through, shut camp down, haul people out, trespass everybody, and other than immediate family, like they could have legally done at any time, and kicked us out. So I thought that was good. But going back to that night, we were there, and the shots were flying, and my most moment was I stood on that line, and the rain was pouring, and there was me, little Kelly, little Kelly, standing there like a lion next to me, and a few other supporters. A lot of people went and locked themselves in their campers, trying to not hear these shots. And they had 30, I think it was 30 officers standing in front of me on that line, on that yellow tape. Most of them young, believe it or not, looked like they were fresh out of the academy. And we were soaked. The rain was pouring. The gunshots were going, and I lectured those cops for an hour straight. I there's clips of it. I watch the clips occasionally, because living the moment and seeing the moment after is two different things. It's
What
two
were their
different
faces like, Jeff? I mean, they're young cops, not all of them, but many of them young. Like were
things. Really understand the fact of what they were part of, and what it meant when they chose to become an RCMP officer, and the oath that they took, and the commitment that they wanted to serve. Was it this? Is this what our country's coming to? Is our RCMP force now used as a tool to defend corrupted agencies? We've seen history repeat itself again and again, and we know what happens when the police force that is supposed to be designed to serve and protect the people churns in to the enforcer of the government. And I tried to reiterate to some of the older officers, tell me, this is what it was like when you became an officer so many years ago. And I looked at all those young ones, and I walked up that line, and I looked in their eyes, and I said to them, you don't have to choose this path. You can walk away. You can be different, because this moment you will reflect on it, and I will reflect on it from my perspective, and everyone involved will reflect on it. And these moments are the moments that will define us as human beings and our commitment to this world and humanity. This is not the way it's supposed to be. That's
you,
what
you
I drilled in those
you know
heads.
what? I'll tell you something, man. People have a way of hardening themselves to tragedy, right? And there was a text thread from Freedom Convoy 4 years ago that got sent around from all these RCMP officers talking to each other. They're joking about the horse trampling that old lady, and they'll feel our jackboots on the ground. And they were laughing. They were laughing. They were laughing at the people who had gathered from all across the country to defend what they thought this country stood for. That was their response to that. And I wonder if any of them reflect back now on what they did to drag Canada just that much closer to a full-on authoritarian state. And so what you did that night for an hour or two or however long it was, where you were lecturing those officers, old and young, and telling them, you're never going to forget this. Guess what? They may have reverted to that state that the RCMP joke text thread was all about, and somehow been able to convince themselves that it wasn't that bad.
Maybe some of them, but I will tell you this, Shadow, some of them broke down in tears, and those sergeants took them off that line.
But you made them, Jeff.
And
You
some
made them aware. I mean, I will bet
did
you
walk away from their job, but they had
some of them are going to walk away. Like they're not going to, like, I can't do this again. They are going to say that they can't do this again. How do they sleep at night? How do they look in the mirror now? They were part of that. They were part of that operation. They were part of a mass murder. They protected these freaking mercenaries from you guys. They protected the CFIA goons from being thrown off the property. They protected a wrong.
These neighboring lands, you know, and held it. Allison's family, Margaret, right?
Yeah.
Sister, they seized, just neighbors, seized their land for all that time, destroyed their property. Protecting, reinforcing what?
That's not what the RCMP is supposed to be.
And
And millions spent on that too. $7 million from what I understand was spent on that operation.
And people are freaking out about where did the family spend some donation that was sent to them to help their cause. Because you know what? If we go back to the very early stage and we look at their original GoFundMe or whatever it was, or their little their thing in Save Our Ostriches or whatever, donate to Save Our Ostriches. This is what we are raising money for. And obviously, when you have lists like that, they're generic. They're, you know, they don't specific, like, you know, $13.47 of this, you know, like it, pet food, supplies, running the farm, upkeep, bills, lawyers' fees. They listed it all. They were honest, open about what they were going to try to raise money for, exactly what they needed money for, and that's why they were trying to raise it.
I just want to get back. Hang on, Jeff, one second, if I can.
The government burned $7 million in 6 weeks protecting the CFIA and then destroying birds.
Destroying birds, destroying property, destroying people. What was the aftermath like? How long did it take for the RCMP to leave? Couple days?
You know, I wasn't there the day they left, Shadow. I left a few days later. I had to get home. I had to get back to my family. It was time. The next day was brutal. The next day was so brutal. That was the day we watched them load the birds into super safe bins.
Yeah.
The bins that they said birds were never in ended up being the birds' final
resting place, I guess.
Well,
did they dump them someplace? What did they?
But we had to watch them load them in, and then we drove up to the gravel pit, and we watched them load them onto the back of semi trucks. There's no words. There's no real anything. You know, what happened? What was that? That's not what we are. It's not normal. It's not healthy. It's not sane. It's not ethical. It's not humane. It's exactly what's wrong with us as a society and a species.
It doesn't have to be like that, is the thing.
No,
just a little common sense and compassion.
It doesn't, as long as guys like you, brother, are out there, and guys like me, and people like Katie and Karen and Dave and all the supporters, along with those people that went to Ottawa, you know, back in 2022. As long as those fires are burning, you know, one of my favorite sayings I heard at the ostrich farm, and it's not like I never heard it in my life, but I watched a little kid, probably the same age as my daughter, tape a sign that they made with their parents on the fence. And after they moved away, I looked at the sign and it said, "All the darkness in the whole world cannot distinguish the light of one candle." And it was probably the most profound thing I took, if I just take a phrase from everything, because it was exactly what we were doing. The candle that's still burning in this country, as long as it burns, as long as there's even one of them, you know, there's light, there's hope, and there's an example that can be set for future generations, for our kids, for our neighbors.
Have you been back?
Only to help. A few weeks later, I went to help take down tents, do a bit of cleanup, organize. It's tough for me, Shadow. I'm not going to lie. I do plan on going and actually making my peace with the place. I'm not ready yet, to be honest. If that, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, it does. It does.
yeah, I'm not quite there yet. It's part of me now for the rest of my life. Just like the Freedom Convoy, just like everything. So I guess that's why I decide to be vocal when I see people speak out against the farm, against the supporters, because I seen it. My perspective is a genuine one that not many can relate to, and other than the people that were there, people that were around, and what the whole world doesn't know what we know, didn't live what we lived, didn't see what we've seen, didn't feel what we feel. So it's frustrating to know people just sit there in the comforts of their homes, with their sodas and their chips and their whatever it may be, scrolling through events like what happened at the Universal Ostrich Farm, like it's a TV show, like it's something that isn't real, and if we keep going down that road as a society, Shadow,
I know.
we're going to become numb to things
That should
that
horrify us.
would never be numb to.
Jeff, this has been a great conversation, man. And it's been pretty emotional, I think, for both of us and maybe for some of the people watching. I want to thank you for coming on
Brother.
And being completely honest. I mean, we've had conversations before, right? They've been private conversations. Some of them have been on here. But I find this one tonight the most raw and honest, especially in the last hour, since we got past all the Julie stuff. And I thank you for being so open about all of this.
I want to thank you too, Shadow, because you know what I haven't done yet? Do exactly what I just did here with you tonight. This is the first time I've done that. So you know what? It was a good thing. And I hope that this is my perspective, my view. I don't expect anyone out there to take anything I say into consideration. I am one man with one voice. But I hope seeing and hearing what I have to say, some people out there that have concerns could maybe put them to bed, feel a little more at peace with how they feel. And I hope those who were once united that are slightly divided,
Can come back home.
and get to work and make this country a better place in every way we can, man.
It's the only way it's ever going to happen. That's the truth of the matter, man. We got to put all these petty differences and grudges aside and start working together. Jeff, thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thank you, brother. Much love.
Okay. Yeah. Jeff Gaudry, Universal Ostrich Farm. Man, I can't even imagine what it would have been like in those last few days. That's all I have for you guys tonight. I did prepare more stuff. I guess I should throw this up on the screen to let you know. Today was the deadline for the Liberal Party, the federal government, to issue an appeal request to the Supreme Court of Canada in the rulings, two rulings now by the Federal Court of Canada and the Appeals Court of Canada, that their invocation of the Emergencies Act was illegal. They waited all this time since that ruling back in January. And now today, with 10 minutes before the deadline at 5 o'clock Eastern, they did file their appeal. CBC, Federal Government Appealing Emergencies Act use to Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court decides to take this case, and that's a big if, we don't know if they will or not, probably. We'll hear about that, I suppose, in the next month and a half. And then eventually this will wend its way to the Supreme Court. And we might have some kind of a decision on this, final decision, by the end of the year. That's just my assessment of the situation. But having gone through all of those court appeals and appeals and appeals as we followed the Universal Ostrich Farm case, that's the opinion that I've decided on. You guys have a great night. It's been a very emotional evening for me. I can tell you that right now. Have a great day tomorrow. The show is live on all the social media platforms this week. And then next week we go back to normal. So if you want to become a member, an all-access member at shadowdavis.com, please go ahead and do that. We look forward to adding you to the family, which is growing on the Telegram page, by the way. The Shadow at Night community on Telegram. You go more than welcome to join and meet some of those great folks back there. Also, I do an audio version of the show on Substack every single day, and that's free. So if you want that, just follow me on Substack, shadowdavis.substack.com, and you can go ahead and listen on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. It's, again, just the audio version of the show for free every single weeknight. And again, the show starts at 8 o'clock Central every night in case you're brand new and have never been here before. You guys have a great night, great day tomorrow, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. All right, bye Central. Bye for now.